To be honest, I didn't know any of those songs we sang at church on Sunday. What are you on about? We sing the same songs every week. I regularly hear both of those comments. The question is, how many songs should a church sing? I'm not talking about how many songs should they sing each week. I'm thinking about in total. How big is the repertoire of songs that a church should have? You might think, why does that even matter? Well, let me tell you what's at stake. The songs that you're singing now, you could be singing for the rest of your life. The songs that you know now, they're probably the ones that you'll sing on your deathbed. The goal of when we're singing and celebrating the good news of Jesus Christ is to praise the Lord, encourage the church, and reach the world. And I think the total number of songs that a church sings can affect their ability to do those things. So let's think of it like this. What happens when a church sings too many songs, and what happens when they sing too few songs? What happens if a church is singing too few songs then? What happens if their repertoire is too small? Well, obviously, they're going to be missing out on singing some great songs, whether they're old songs or new songs. And if the list is really restrictive, then they're going to be missing out on learning some of those songs. It could also mean that you're not covering all the bases. You're not singing about all of Christian life or who God is or what is done in Jesus. Think of it like a diet. If your list of songs is too small, then you've not got a healthy, balanced diet. I think variety is a really good thing. Colossians 3 and Ephesians 5 talk about singing psalms, hymns, and songs from the Spirit. Now, whatever that means, it surely implies some sort of variety. God is such a big God, and He's done so much for us in Jesus, that there's not just one song which can capture all of that. Another result of a church singing too few songs is that they're likely to get bored or complacent or frustrated with those songs. You can imagine singing the same songs over and over again. It's going to get boring, isn't it? And I think musicians are most likely to be the ones getting bored with the songs that they're singing. They're the ones who rehearse them before the service and perhaps practice them during the week. So they're more likely to get bored more quickly. And if the church, and perhaps especially the musicians, are bored with the songs that they're singing, I think it's going to be harder to achieve that goal we were talking about earlier, of praising the Lord, encouraging the church, and reaching the world. So now let's look at the flip side. What happens if a church sings too many songs? Well, if the church's repertoire is way too big, it's kind of obvious, isn't it? The people at church aren't going to know the songs that they're singing. And again, I think that's going to make it hard for them to praise the Lord, encourage the church, and reach the world as they sing about the good news of Jesus Christ. Specifically though, I think it's going to be hard for a certain few groups of people if there's too many songs to sing. Think about newcomers to your church. They're not going to know the songs that you sing, and it's going to take them longer if there's lots to learn. Same as with children, they're learning the songs as well. What about people whose first language isn't the same as the language that you're singing in? It's going to make it hard for them if there's lots to learn. And what about people who just come to your church irregularly? They're not there every week. They're not hearing the same songs over and over again. They're going to really struggle to join in. If a church sings too many songs, then musicians aren't going to know them either, and they're going to struggle to lead them from the front. And I also think it's going to hamper their creativity. If every time they come to a song they have to relearn it again because they haven't done it in such a long time, then they're not going to be able to do it in a new and creative way. Variety is good in songs, but it's also good in the way that you play those songs as well. It might also be hard for new musicians to join the team, because it can seem such a daunting task with such a long list of songs to learn. But I think there's one really big thing that a church misses out on if they sing too many songs. They'll be missing out on repetition, which is a really good thing. Colossians 3:16 talks about letting the message of Christ dwell in you richly. I think as we sing the same truths of the gospel over and over again, that's one of the ways that happens. C.S. Lewis, in his book Prayer, Letters to Malcolm, talks about how it's a good thing when a worship service feels familiar. He says a good shoe is a shoe that you don't notice. I think the same is true with our songs that we sing at church. When we don't have to focus on the song and the music itself, we can focus more readily on God. Another thing to bear in mind is our memories. There's this graph called the forgetting curve, and it's got a shape kind of like this. The simple fact is, we forget most of what we learn within 24 hours. I think it's something like 80%. The remedy to that, though, is spaced repetition, by repeating the same thing over and over again, spaced out. By singing too many songs, it's going to be harder to remember them because they're coming up less frequently. I'm sure you've heard stories about people with dementia or Alzheimer's, and how they can still remember the songs that they sang when they were younger. It's a beautiful thing, and we don't want to miss out on that by having not enough repetition now. Here's the thing. I think a church really should have a list, no matter how big or small it is. Not everyone needs to know about it, but I do think someone needs to have eyes on it, so that they can see what you're missing out on. Churches' repertoires have shrunk over the years, And I reckon that's because we use hymn books less. Here's one of the hymn books that we used at the church that I grew up at. This is a chunky boy, it's got 800 songs on it. And realistically, we didn't do all of these songs. But every now and then, someone would pick one of them, and people would really struggle to join in because we just didn't know it that well. We're going to do some maths. We're going to work out how many songs the average churchgoer sings. This isn't for musicians, because they probably hear those songs a lot more as they rehearse and practice. Okay, the average churchgoer probably sings maybe 5 songs in a service. I don't know how many songs you do at your church, but let's take 5 for an example. So 5 songs in a service, and let's say they go to 50 services in a year. Maybe they're on holiday for 2 weeks. So in the course of a year, they sing 250 songs. Now if your church has a repertoire of 250 songs, then they're not going to sing the same song twice in a year, or they're going to sing some songs more than once, and there'll be other songs which they don't ever sing, and they won't know as well. Everything that I've said so far leads me to the conclusion that the exact number of songs a church should sing is